Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app. Got a lot to get to today. A lot of stuff on Anthony Richardson, a little bit of stuff on Daniel Jones, a very important aspect of playing quarterback that we aren't really talking about when it comes to this Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson battle. Also got Jake Arthur, who's going to join the show at 11 to talk Colts. He's the other host of Locked on Colts. He also writes about the Colts as well. He's at every practice, so this is a guy who is very much in the know on all things Indianapolis Colts. Now, Mike Sando of The Athletic, he posts this quarterback tiers article every year before the NFL season starts. And it's not his own personal tiers, right? The Athletic surveys 50 different NFL executives, coaches every single year, and they create the rankings, right? So it's not, Mike Sando making these up. Like these rankings come from legitimate NFL coaches and legitimate NFL players. Or excuse me, from legitimate NFL coaches and executives. And tier one, pretty simple: Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lamar Jackson, Matthew Stafford, in that order. And then the second tier, Jaden Daniels feels a little high for me. Like we're going to say he's the sixth best quarterback in the NFL after one season. That, like I said, a little high for me. Jaden Daniels at 6, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff, CJ Stroud, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, and Brock Purdy. That is the second tier. Brock Purdy being a second tier quarterback kind of bothers me. Kyler Murray kicks off the third tier, followed by Aaron Rodgers, Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence, Geno Smith, Bo Nix, Sam Darnold, Drake May, Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, and Kirk Cousins. And then the fourth tier of quarterbacks, Russell Wilson at 26, Justin Fields, Michael Penix Jr., J.J. McCarthy, Daniel Jones coming in at 30th, Joe Flacco, former Colt, at 31, Anthony Richardson ranked 32nd, followed by Spencer Rattler and Kenny Pickett, who is in a tier all by himself. That's usually either a really good thing or a really bad thing. A really bad thing here for Kenny Pickett. And, I read through it last night. I was like, I generally agree with this. And then I asked myself this question. What tier does Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, whoever ends up being the Indianapolis Colts starter, what tier do they need to be in order for the Colts to be a playoff team? Like, at what point am I like, yes, these are the level of quarterbacks that could take this Indianapolis Colts roster to the playoffs, win 10 games, win the division maybe, all that kind of stuff. And as of right now, Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson are regarded as tier 4 quarterbacks. Not very good. Daniel Jones ranked 30th, Anthony Richardson ranked 32nd. Only in front of guys like Spencer Rattler and Kenny Pickett. And as I look through it, I think the answer is the upper part of tier 3. Like, can the Colts make the playoffs with Kirk Cousins, Bryce Young, or Sam Darnold? Maybe. I would bet probably not. But they could make the playoffs with a guy like Kyler Murray, or a drama-free, which is very hard to find, drama-free Aaron Rodgers, or a Tua Tagovailoa. A Trevor Lawrence kind of season for the Colts at quarterback would probably earn them a spot in the playoffs. Okay? And, obviously, if Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones became like the 13th best quarterback in the NFL, then obviously they would probably make the playoffs. Tier 1, not even an option. They're not going to make a leap that far ahead. But what do those tier 3 quarterbacks all have in common? I think it's really simple. I think it's plain as day. All of them can execute the system that they're in at a pretty high level. And then the upper level tier 3 guys have a little bit of magic to them from time to time. Like Bo Nix just showed up in Denver, executed the Sean Payton system to the best of his abilities, and the Broncos won 10 games, and they made the playoffs. They got trounced in the first round against the Bills, but hey, they made the playoffs, something that the Colts haven't done in like 4 years. Sam Darnold showed up in Minnesota and just ran the offense the way that Kevin O'Connell wanted him to, and they went 14-3 because the pieces around Sam Darnold were really elite. I still think that is the best environment for a quarterback to be in terms of just the players and the coaching that would be surrounding that guy. You know, Tua just runs the offense in Miami, and they score 1 million points. That's what all of those tier 3 quarterbacks have in common. They just execute the offense. And we've seen a season of Daniel Jones executing an offense. It came year 1 of Brian Dable. Brian Dable, offensive coordinator with the Bills. He helped Josh Allen figure it out a bit. And then, you know, he ends up with the Giants, and he shows up and he changes the offense, and they're running the football, and they're asking Daniel Jones to do the bare minimum. And Daniel Jones is doing the bare minimum, 15 touchdown passes and 17 games is, you know, that's high-level stuff if you ask some Colts fans. But he just did the bare minimum. He just ran the offense that Brian Dable asked him to, and they not only made the playoffs, but they won a playoff game. And as I said, the top end of tier 3, the Kyler Murrays of the world, like they got a little bit of magic to him. You know, Kyler Murray has the ability to make plays off script. Tua's processing is special, according to so many former quarterbacks and guys who know significantly more about football than I do. Aaron Rodgers still has a little bit of that in him, and Trevor Lawrence has shown that occasionally. And that's really, I think, all that we're looking for from whoever plays quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts this year. Okay, a quarterback who can just run the system. Can you just do what is asked of you? And then occasionally give me just like a little splash of special from time to time. You know, can you hit Tyler Warren when he runs a little curl route 7 yards past the line of scrimmage? And then occasionally, can you hit Alec Pierce over the top for a big play? That's what we're looking for, because we've seen a quarterback come into Indianapolis, run the Shane Steichen system, and almost make the playoffs. Gardner Minshew. That's what he did. He showed up, you know, followed Shane Steichen from Philly to Indy. You know, Anthony Richardson gets hurt, you know, messes up his shoulder. He's out the rest of the season. Gardner Minshew comes in and does the bare minimum. He threw 15 touchdown passes that whole season, despite starting 14 games that year, if I remember correctly. I believe he appeared in every single game that the Colts played that year. Okay? Like, can you just run the system? Now, Minshew didn't have enough magic to allow for the Colts to win 10 games. But that's what the Colts need. That's all that you need to win this division. It's part of why the Titans are, you know, while I think they're going to be really bad, and I think they're probably only going to win like 6 games, if Cam Ward shows up, you know, number 1 overall pick in the draft, if he can run the system that Brian Callahan has, and he can provide, you know, a decent amount of magic, you know, making plays off script, you know, finding Calvin Ridley, during like scramble drills, then watch out for the Titans, because this division isn't very good. But when it comes to the Colts, this is why Anthony Richardson should be the starter. Not saying he will be. You know, like I'm still of the belief that it's going to be Daniel Jones, because Shane Steichen is coaching for his job, and he knows that he almost made the playoffs with Gardner freaking Minshew. And Daniel Jones is a slightly better version of Gardner Minshew. Like I know that that's sitting in his mind. Like it has to. It has to be. But I don't know if Daniel Jones is going to be able to provide the little bit of extra magic that the Colts are going to need in order to make the playoffs. Because I'm not convinced that this defense is going to be great. There's a lack of a pass rush. We have DeForest Buckner. Yeah, he's fine. There's no elite edge rusher. Kwity Paye is good for 8 to 8.5 sacks a year. Yeah, that's fine. Whatever. He doesn't really impact the game in big spots. And because of that, the Colts are going to need a little bit of magic from whoever is playing quarterback. And I trust for Anthony Richardson to do that way more than I trust the Daniel Jones who got benched for Tommy DeVito last year. So another thing in Anthony Richardson's direction, if he can just come out in this joint practice tomorrow and do the easy things and make them look easy, and then if he can go out in the preseason game on Saturday, and take that quarter and a half and just make the easy things look easy, and occasionally, maybe hit Alec Pierce over the top once, and maybe have like a really cool scramble drill where he's on the move and he throws the ball on the run and he finds Josh Downs 12 yards down the field. That's all that we need to see. Just a little bit of magic and do the easy things easily. Now, Mike Sando was not the only big time writer who came out with a quarterback tiers list. And Bill Simmons, who I like to listen to, read his stuff a lot growing up, watched him on ESPN. He came out with this quarterback pyramid thing, and he ranked Josh Allen as the best quarterback in the NFL. And this is going to sound like a Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen bit. It kind of is, but I promise it comes back to the Colts. So Bill Simmons ranks Josh Allen as the best quarterback in the NFL, and that's simply just wrong. Anyone with a set of eyes and the ability to read knows and understands that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. Like I talk about the ability to just run the offense and also provide magic. Like that is Patrick Mahomes, right? It's also Josh Allen, because Josh Allen won the MVP last year and all that kind of stuff. But it's Patrick Mahomes, the guy who's 4-0 against Josh Allen in the playoffs. What else needs to be said? People get so caught up in talent, and talent is important, right? The best players in every sport tend to have the most talent, but they also win, and that's the most important thing. Tom Brady is the best quarterback in the history of the NFL because he won, and that is ultimately the goal. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL right now because he wins at a level that we, quite frankly, haven't really seen. If Patrick Mahomes gives you the highest floor in the history of the NFL, he's only made the AFC Championship game every year that he's been the starter. 7 years in a row, 5 of those years ending with a trip to the Super Bowl. I understand that as of right now, due to personnel and things, watching Josh Allen is significantly more fun and more amazing than watching Patrick Mahomes because, he can run around and, he's got a big arm and all those things and all that kind of stuff. But like, first and foremost, let me remind you, when Mahomes had Tyreek Hill and, in the middle of his prime, Travis Kelce, Mahomes was way more fun to watch than Josh Allen is right now. But boring wins. Boring wins a lot. Tom Brady was incredibly boring. He made all the easy throws, a lot of check downs to different guys and, just made the game look easy. He made the easy things look easy. There's a lot of slant routes to Wes Welker and curl routes to Julian Edelman. And then obviously, you have the 1 year in 2007 when he's ripping the ball over the top to Randy Moss and doing really cool things like that, right? It's awesome. It's fun. But for the most part, Tom Brady was pretty boring. But the reason why he won a lot is because when a big play needed to be made, he always made it. He always made it. 3rd and 8 with 2 minutes and 20 seconds to go. The Patriots need a first down in order to, get to the 2-minute warning and ice the game. You just knew that Tom Brady was going to convert on that 3rd down. You just knew that he was, because that's ultimately what the best players do. They deliver in the biggest spots. And that is all that Patrick Mahomes has done throughout his entire career. He makes the play in the big spot. He does it every single playoff game, it seems like. How many times has Josh Allen made the play in the playoffs against the Chiefs? The answer is none. Zero. You say, well, Jonathan, he's made good plays and, and he has. You're right. With that being said, he hasn't made the play. Because if you make the play, you win the game. That is ultimately the goal. And that is another part of this Colts quarterback battle that we can't really evaluate in training camp. And it's part of why games are so important. And it's why the history of Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson is so important. Which guy between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson can make the play with the game on the line? And you say, well, Jonathan, we don't really know. It's just training camp. I say that we do know. And this is where I say that I like Anthony Richardson. Yes, Anthony Richardson was bad last year. He was so bad. Completed less than half of his passes, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. But he did have not one, not two, but 3 game-winning drives for the Colts last year, which was tied for the 9th most in the NFL. Late in games, when you needed a play to be made, as bad as Anthony Richardson was, as much as he struggled, he found a way to make the play. He did it against the Miami Dolphins early in the season. The game-winning drive against the Jets was the prettiest of all of them. That was the best game that he played all year. The drive against the Patriots was one of the ugliest drives I've ever seen. The drive was like 19 plays. The Colts are picking up like 4 yards per play. It's like 4th and 3, and Anthony Richardson's just running around, just trying to make something happen, and he did it over and over and over again in that game against the Patriots. And that is something that you have to have at quarterback in this league because every game is close. It's really funny to me where, people are talking about teams that are going to make a jump this year and stuff. And it's like, oh, this team was, 1-7 or 1-9 or whatever in 1-score games last year. It's like, yeah, it's the NFL. All these games are 1-score games. And that's why Patrick Mahomes wins so many games because he makes the play in the big spot. And Anthony Richardson showed us last year that late in games, when it's time to make the play in the big spot, he is capable of doing that. 3 game-winning drives last year for a quarterback who wasn't very good is something noteworthy. Now, I'm not saying that, Richardson's going to go on to win a bunch of Super Bowls and stuff. No, but I am saying that we've seen this guy, produce in the biggest spots, which is something that you have to have at the quarterback position in the NFL, given how many close games are played. Now, you also have to have the ability to complete the 4-yard out route and to complete the drag route across the middle and all those other the ability to identify a free rusher coming off the edge. That way you don't dislocate your pinky. Those things are important as well, but those are the things that Anthony Richardson has apparently been working on. I've got that audio for you in 4 minutes.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. You can head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X __ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen, of course, on the Indy Sports Ticket app. You can also listen to the Dan Dockett Show on that app as well from noon to 3. He's back in studio today after spending a day out at the fair. Anthony Richardson is trying to lock in. Anthony Richardson's trying to say the right things. He's trying to get better. He's finally not just, making rap videos in the offseason. Seems like he's become a little more serious. I don't know if he's totally serious, but he's clearly, I think, become a little more serious about his craft. Bringing in competition, it'll do that to you. And Anthony Richardson went on Sirius XM radio yesterday and, just talked about a little bit about what he was trying to work on in the offseason. And he talked about his pinky a little bit as well. Here's Anthony Richardson talking about the offseason and his pinky.
Yeah, man, that was a huge emphasis when it came to my offseason training this year. Everybody knows I can rip it and gun it whenever I get a chance, and growing up, I always heard you throw the ball so hard. I'm like, I'm not trying to do that. It just happens to do that. So I just wanted to take a step in my game and just be able to make those touch passes when it's there, because you don't have to run and gun every single thing. And I also just think about my rookie year, playing against the Rams, and I just see Stafford just throwing the ball just so nice and so soft. And I'm like, man, I got to add that to my game, because that just throws guys open, gets guys open, and just get them to the ball. And also when it comes to the offense, I just feel like I've been putting in the work just to try to understand the offense more. I told Coach I wanted to be able to master the offense. So whenever there was a chance for me to teach the offense, I want to be just as good as him when it comes to teaching that. So that's just me just trying to take a step and just improve my game every step of the way.
For most mere mortals, having a finger on your throwing hand that doesn't really work that well right now would be a big issue. I didn't see you wince when we shook hands or anything like that. I mean, how is the pinky finger doing right now?
Nah, it's all good, honestly. I was actually trying to get back in the game when it happened, because I just saw it. I'm like, man, that's not supposed to look like that. But, they popped it back in place, and I just threw the ball around a little bit just to see how it felt. And ultimately, it's been feeling better day by day. And, it hasn't stopped me from practice, and I'm excited to keep it going.
Anthony Richardson right there talking about some of the offseason work. Also talked a little bit about his pinky right there. Oh, man, I want to be nice to the guy. I really do. I just want to spin all this glass half full. Anthony Richardson, former number 4 overall pick. Yeah, he's figuring it out. And he is. But, it's year 3, man. It's year 3. I can understand not having mastered the offense in your rookie season, because these NFL offenses, they are so incredibly complex. I don't know if you've watched Quarterback from this year, but they do a whole thing with Jared Goff where he's calling plays, and it takes him 15 seconds to call a play, and it's big, it's complicated. You have to not only know what you're doing, but you have to know what everyone else is doing, and then you have to understand protections, and then you have to be able to sit back and look at the defense and audible to a run play, because whenever you go into the huddle, they're not calling just one play, they're calling at least 2. Some teams will call more. And so understanding an NFL offense it's like drinking from a fire hose. And so if you're a rookie and you don't fully understand the offense, okay, I can understand that. But you have to know that after your rookie season. And in your first offseason, the offseason before your second year, and if you're Anthony Richardson and you have surgery on your shoulder, and so you can't throw all offseason, that is the time for you to sit in your house with your arm in a big air cast, because that's usually what they put you in after you have surgery on your shoulder. And you have to, buy a projector, get on Oh, what's that app called? I can see it. It's where people post their highlights. But you have to get on there and you have to learn the offense. You have to open up the playbook. You have to shoot Coach Steichen a text and say, "Hey, Coach, I'm out of commission all offseason. I'm not gonna be able to work on my touch like he said he worked on this previous offseason. So instead, I want to fully master the playbook. I've got nothing else going on this summer. I'm going to Cancun for like 2 weeks on vacation. Outside of that, though, like the nose should have been in the playbook, learning everything about it and becoming a master of the offense. I guess better late than never in terms of trying to figure that out, but maybe take the offseason where you can't improve your ability to throw the football. Maybe take that offseason and master the playbook. Learn the playbook at a higher level than everybody else. Like that should have been something that was worked on earlier in his career. Now, I do like hearing that he worked on his touch in the offseason. That was an important thing, okay, because touch was clearly an issue for him last year. You know, he talked about the ability to kind of feather balls in there, talks about how Matthew Stafford throws a very catchable football. Very important, obviously. I do wonder if part of why the Colts had so many drops last year is because Anthony Richardson just throws the ball unnecessarily hard. And he says he's not trying to do that, but it happens. That's something that has to be fixed. Then again, you know, the Colts did have like 4 drops when Daniel Jones played quarterback the other day, and he throws the softest football I have ever seen thrown. But touch was an issue for him last year, and I do like hearing that was something that he wanted to work on in the offseason. Okay, like that's the thing that, you know, everyone has said that he's improved at. You know, Michael Pittman Jr. talking to Kay Adams says that he's gotten better at layering the football. Shane Steichen has said it. But then again, what are they going to say? No, he still sucks at that. But hey, we appreciate him trying. So I don't know. I also like hearing that he tried to go back into the preseason game after he hurt his pinky. That's something that I don't think would have happened last year. And maybe that's very unfair of me to say. I'm going to talk to Jake Arthur about all this, by the way, here in about 30 minutes when he comes on the show. And, you know, maybe it's unfair of me to say that I don't think that he would have fought to go back into the game last year. But there appeared to be a lack of a sense of urgency for him when it comes to playing the quarterback position. Like, Joe Flacco's 40. He's not going to take my job. And then he did for, you know, a couple weeks there. And then, you know, he got it back, and we started the game against the Jets. And I think is going to be a real turning point for him. Because look, man, like when you get benched for a guy who everyone knows doesn't have a future here in Indy, that should be a really big wake-up call. And it seems like since that's happened, Anthony Richardson has figured things out just a little bit more. Speaking of figuring things out, Shohei Ohtani, he's got to figure out what's going on in his world. Shohei Ohtani is involved in a $240 million real estate scandal in Hawaii. So the Associated Press did a really good job reporting on this. A lot of what I'm about to say is coming from them. So a Hawaii real estate investor and broker, they're suing Shohei Ohtani, claiming that he and his agent, big break there for him having the agent involved, got them fired for a $240 million luxury housing development on the Hapuna Coast. And they basically hired Shohei Ohtani to come in and endorse this new luxury housing development in Hawaii. Now, according to the lawsuit, which was filed on Friday, Ohtani's agent, Nez Balelo, I know I'm saying that wrong. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that terribly. The agent apparently kept demanding these concessions from the developer and the real estate broker. Okay. And then eventually they demanded that their business partner, Kingsbarn Reality Capital, drop them from the deal. And I guess that Kingsbarn did it. And there's more information how they only hired, Ohtani for promotional and branding value and all those kinds of things. And they exploited their, celebrity leverage in order to get them fired, essentially. And, the only reason why they did it was for their own financial interest and their own financial gain. If something like this happens once, the gambling stuff, then it's a coincidence. And Shohei Ohtani can play dumb and act like he didn't know what was going on and say that he didn't have access to his bank accounts. And he can just kind of throw his agents under the bus for all of these gambling issues. But if it happens twice, you probably had some sort of involvement in this one. Also, his agent already took the fall once. Is his agent going to be willing to take the fall again? And, is anything going to happen to Ohtani? Probably not, because he's Shohei Ohtani and he's really good at baseball. And for some reason, when athletes tend to get away with stuff like this, I'm sure Ohtani's got really good lawyers. If he doesn't, I'm sure that the owner of the Dodgers will provide him with one, because he's Shohei freaking Ohtani. I mean, he's going to be fine, I promise. But it's just an interesting thing. And, the gambling thing didn't even happen that long ago. I mean, less than a year and a half ago. And then this pops up. Like, there's something, I'm not going to say that there's something wrong with Shohei Ohtani, but he seems a little sketchy. And that's not a great thing. Not a great thing. But what hopefully is going to be a great thing is Laiatu Latu this year. DeForest Buckner was asked about Latu and the work that he's put in over the summer. I've got the audio of Buckner talking about Latu in 4 minutes.
Tickets at noon. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Now, this is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X__ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And, of course, 1430 a.m. if you're in the Indianapolis area as well. Coming up here in 20 minutes, Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts, and he also covers the Colts for Sports Illustrated. He's going to join the show coming up here in about 20 minutes or so. And, of course, we're going to talk Colts and camp and, obviously the quarterback battle, what to expect tomorrow in that Packers and Colts, joint practice. How is that going to go? Obviously, no Jordan Love. He's having surgery on his thumb. And the guy that I'm really interested to see, aside from obviously the quarterbacks, is Laiatu Latu. He's supposed to be the guy at some point on this defensive line. Took him 15th overall. Chris Ballard just couldn't believe that he was still available at 15th. He was the first defensive player taken in that draft. He needs to be awesome this year, and hopefully he will be. DeForest Buckner was asked about Latu coming off of a pretty disappointing rookie season. Here's what DeForest Buckner had to say.
Oh, tremendous jump. I mean, he was frustrated his first year and everything. And, he went into this offseason, ready to work, and he came in, he's having a great camp, and, he's more comfortable, within the scheme after learning all the things. And, he's been doing well. I mean, it's been awesome being able to see him come off the edge, and obviously with me and a couple other guys inside, it takes some pressure off of me, and maybe they can slide some protection that way.
DeForest Buckner right there talking about Laiatu Latu. Apparently he's having a really good camp. A little joking there at the end. Maybe they can slide some of the protection that way. Make my life a little bit easier. And, all that kind of stuff. Very, very funny, DeForest Buckner. Now, I do like hearing that Laiatu Latu was frustrated with the year that he had last year. He only had 4 sacks. He wasn't an every down player. Only played, about half of the Colts defensive snaps. He was really only playing in these obvious passing situations. And you should expect more from the 15th overall pick and the first defensive player selected in the NFL draft. And it was just a really disappointing year from him last year. And look, I gotta be honest, I don't expect for Laiatu Latu to be a stud this year. If Laiatu Latu has, 12 and a half sacks, I'll be very surprised. I think he's going to wind up being somewhere between 8 and 10 sacks. Would love for him to get to 10. Would love that. I think that would be awesome. That would make me very excited for what he could be in year 3. So while I do think we see Laiatu Latu become a better player, if you're hoping that he's going to be like top 10 in the NFL in sacks this year, I wouldn't hold your breath for that. He's going to have somewhere between 8 and 10 sacks. They just have to come at the right time. That's really the biggest thing. Like I talked earlier about how Anthony Richardson had a knack last year for making big plays in big spots, 3-game winning drives, despite not being a very good quarterback last year. Laiatu Latu needs to do something similar. Timing is everything in the way that we perceive players. If you play well on national TV in prime time, that does a lot for your national brand. Just does, right? The timing of when you play well, who's watching you, all those things, but also the timing of when you make the plays. Kwity Paye had 8 sacks last year in 14 games. Tied for, I think, 29th in the NFL last year. But you never noticed him. You're never like, oh, there's Kwity Paye making a big play right there. Nope, don't think you've ever said that. It's like, oh, there's Kwity Paye making a normal play in a pretty normal spot. And look, 8 sacks, it's not a ton of sacks. It's also not a small amount of sacks. Like, it's pretty average, right? And then you look at the sack numbers from last year. Kwity Paye had more sacks than Max Crosby, Max Crosby, to be fair, only played in 12 games, but 2 games, not a huge difference, especially since Max Crosby played a higher percentage of snaps for the Raiders than what Kwity Paye did last year. It's the same number of sacks as guys like Khalil Mack, absolute stud. Cameron Hayward of the Steelers, absolute stud. And Josh Hines-Allen, another stud off the edge for Jacksonville. All 4 of those players, Max Crosby, Khalil Mack, Cameron Hayward, and Josh Hines-Allen, all 4 of those players are better than Kwity Paye. 0 doubts about it. None whatsoever. The difference is all 4 of those guys, their sacks come in really big spots. Like 3rd and 9, the Raiders need to stop because there's, a minute and 57 seconds left in the game, and they have 3 timeouts, and they're down by 3, and the Raiders need to get the ball back right here for a chance to win. You just know that Max Crosby's going to come up with a sack, or he's going to hit the quarterback when he throws it. He's going to find a way to win that rep in the biggest spot. Khalil Mack and Cam Hayward have only been doing that for their entire careers. The best players make the big plays in the big spots. And so when it comes to Laiatu Latu, he could have a really good year with 9 sacks if all 9 of his sacks come in spots where the Colts need them. Okay, it's like what's more valuable? If someone gave me water right now while I'm doing the show, or if someone gave me water after I'd been in the desert for 36 hours with no water. The latter, no doubt. It's all about timing. And as badly as I want for Laiatu Latu to have, 17 and a half sacks this year and take the league by storm and win Defensive Player of the Year and all that kind of stuff. Like that would be lovely. Probably not going to happen, though. So I would just like to see him make big plays in big spots. That's what you need in order to win football games in the NFL. And he's going to have an opportunity to, prove how good of a player he can be tomorrow. He has a great opportunity. No Jordan Love tomorrow at the joint practice for the Green Bay Packers as he's having surgery on his left thumb, so his non-throwing hand. So if you have money on the Packers, like I will here soon, then, still bet them. You're good. He's projected to be back before week 1. So, he should be able to throw because it's his left hand, not his right. And so when it comes to the joint practice tomorrow, I just kind of want to highlight some of the things that I think should happen. The Colts secondary should have an absolute field day, even with all the injuries. If Malik Willis walks into, Westfield, where they're going to have these practices, and is dropping back, tearing up the Indianapolis Colts secondary, I'm going to be very, very concerned. That's a bad sign. And, if Malik Willis has a big day, then everyone will just chalk it up to, the injuries. No Juju Brents, no Jalen Jones, no Justin Wally, Kenny Moore. I don't know if he's going to practice tomorrow or not. He's got that thing with his right knee. Javarius Ward's been nursing some minor injuries. The injuries. That's why Malik Willis had a great day. Don't care. Malik freaking Willis should not be able to walk into Westfield and have a big day against the Colts secondary, no matter who's out there. Now, on the flip side, the Colts wide receivers should have a big day. So just be ready for all the A.D. Mitchell propaganda. The Packers cornerbacks, not great. Jair Alexander, left. The guy who started opposite of Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, also left in the offseason. And to say that they were replaced would not be accurate. Nate Hobbs basically just gets elevated. And then they have a 7th-round rookie by the name of Micah Robinson that is also expected to start. So A.D. Mitchell propaganda is coming. Michael Pittman Jr. needs to have a big day. Josh Downs should also have a big day. Right? Like these guys should create a ton of separation, which I would think would lead to Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones both playing well. That's what I would think. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but that's what should happen. The receivers should all have big days, and Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones should benefit from playing against these bad defensive backs that the Green Bay Packers have. Now, they're not all bad, right? The Packers do have good safeties. They brought in Xavier McKinney last offseason from the Giants. He had 8 interceptions last year. That's really impressive. Okay, they drafted a strong safety in the second round of the draft this year. So, the safeties are good, but the corners for the Packers are not. The Packers' biggest strength, and this brings me back to Laiatu Latu, the Packers' biggest strength is their offensive line. Because once again, the Packers have a good offensive line. It doesn't seem to matter what, I couldn't tell you the last time the Packers drafted an offensive tackle or anything like that in the first round. Yet for some reason, their offensive line is good every single year. It's really impressive. Like what they're able to do up front, it's impressive. It is. If the Colts defensive line has a good day, then that will mean something. Oftentimes during training camp, you have to figure out what is actually noteworthy and what isn't. Because obviously when your offense is playing against your defense, if your offense has a really good day, then that's concerning because it means that your defense had a bad day and vice versa. So you have to figure out what is real and what is not. And so when it comes to the Colts, if the secondary has a good day with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson playing quarterback, to me that doesn't really mean much because Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones aren't very good. Now, if Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones have good days, then that's concerning because, we don't really know what to expect from the Colts secondary this year in the first year of Lou Anarumo. Tomorrow, if Laiatu Latu and DeForest Buckner and the rest of this Colts defensive line, if they have a good day against this Packers offensive line, that means something because this Packers offensive line is good. All the propaganda that we're going to get about A.D. Mitchell and Michael Pittman Jr. and the rest of the receivers tomorrow doesn't mean much to me because the Packers don't have very good defensive backs. Tyler Warren, if he has a big day tomorrow, that'll mean something because I like the linebackers that the Packers have. If the Colts are able to run the football tomorrow, that'll mean something because the Packers had a top 5 scoring defense in the NFL last year. It's because their front seven did a really good job of stopping the run. So if Jonathan Taylor has another big day, I talked about the day he had a couple days ago, big 80-yard touchdown run, that will mean something because the Packers front seven in terms of defending the run should be good. In terms of rushing the passer, shouldn't be great. They don't have any great edge rusher. Luke Van Ness is a former first-round pick who hasn't really delivered. He had 3 sacks last year. So we're disappointed in Laiatu Latu. The guy that the Packers took, not very good. So those are the things that I think are noteworthy. Does the defensive line have a good day? The receivers, quarterbacks, they should have good days because the Packers secondary is cheese, pun intended. So we'll see. Coming up, top of the hour, 11 o'clock, Jake Arthur. So here in 7 minutes or so, Jake Arthur, he is set to join the show. And we're going to talk about all the things that I've covered so far today. The Colts quarterbacks situation, Anthony Richardson. Jake has been at practice every single day. I don't think he's missed one. So he's got a good, grip on the situation in terms of the quarterback battle. And one of the things that I really want to know, we keep hearing how, Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson are really close, and it's a really good position battle and, they're really pushing each other and it's even and all this kind of stuff. That's great. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're good. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're good, because it's just because you're even doesn't mean both players are great. It's these two hitters, I'm going to use a baseball analogy here. These two hitters, they're so even. And then like you look at their splits and they're hitting like 180 with like 7 home runs and an on base percentage of like 323. It's like, yeah, they're even, but neither one of them are very good. And that's really what I want to find out. Like, do we believe, or does Jake Arthur believe that one of these guys is a legitimately good quarterback that can lead the Colts to, 10 wins and maybe just maybe a division title or a playoff appearance? And if not, do either one of them, is there enough room for one of them to grow into a guy that can do that this year? Because Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard's jobs, they're on the line this year. I'm very excited to talk to Jake Arthur, who covers the Colts over at Sports Illustrated and also is the co-host of the Locked On Colts podcast. We have his counterpart, Zach Hicks, on all the time. Zach's really good. So is Jake. Very, 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 very excited to have him on here in about 5 minutes.
Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X _ Jonathan Smith. Follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app. Also follow our guest, Jake Arthur, on X at Jake Arthur NFL. He is the host of the Locked On Colts podcast with friend of the show, Zach Hicks. You can also read Jake's stuff over at SI.com where he covers the Colts. Jake, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, I am awesome this morning. Thanks so much for having me.
You got it, man. You got it. I'm really excited just to kind of hear your thoughts on the Colts quarterback battle, because I know you've been out there at training camp. And I've heard so many people say, and I've seen people write about this, that, you know, Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson are really even in terms of this quarterback battle, which is great. I think that's a good thing. But are either one of them good? Like, do you have like a high enough level of confidence in them for this Colts team to maybe win 10 games or so?
You know, honestly, I think you probably just asked the most important question, is like whether or not either of these guys are difference makers or just like winners, because there has to be a winner in the competition. So if you go with Daniel Jones, I don't think you're looking at good at his best. You're probably looking at a guy who's at his best in that 15 to 20 range of NFL quarterbacks. And again, that's if you're getting like 2022 Daniel Jones. Anthony, again, like he's not going to be the consistent guy. He's not going to be really what you're probably looking for traditionally in a long-term quarterback. But his ability to avoid sacks and his very much his willingness to go downfield, and he's kind of got that clutch gene. I wouldn't say he would be probably considered like overall good and consistent, but I do think Anthony would be considered a difference maker. I don't think there's much a defense would have to do to prepare for like Daniel Jones, but there is a lot they would have to do to prepare for Anthony Richardson. So while I would struggle to call either of them like good options in the traditional sense, I do think one of them would probably be more of a difference maker.
And that would be Richardson, just because of like, I know that Daniel Jones can run and like, that's great, but not like Richardson. So it'd be him just because of what he brings with his legs. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, there's just stuff Anthony can do that not everybody else can do, and especially, Jones. So, obviously the strong arm, even when Anthony throws a bad pass like off platform or something, it often still has a chance to get there just because of his arm strength. And then obviously his ability just like do simple stuff like pick up 3rd and 4 or 4th and 3, just because he's simply going to be faster than the guy on the edge that he's beating. Again, his ability to avoid sacks is just as good as anybody else in the league. And we have seen him, even though they're bad opponents, we have seen him lead fourth quarter comebacks. And although I do think with Daniel Jones, you would probably get kind of a higher floor and a more consistent offense, you're just kind of capped at what he would offer. So yeah, I think if you're looking to get the most juice from the squeeze, you're probably looking at Anthony.
Joined by Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts. He also writes about the Colts over at SI.com. You can follow him on X at Jake Arthur NFL. Yeah, I think that's the consensus of how people feel. Like the ceiling's a little higher with Richardson, but Daniel Jones is a little more consistent. And you mentioned Richardson and how he like on 3rd and 4, 4th and 3, if you need someone to run and pick it up, like Richardson's the guy because he can beat people to the edge. But what about like throwing for that first down? Has he gotten any better at the short accuracy kind of stuff that we saw him struggle with last year?
From what we've seen in camp, I would give him some credit and say he has been a little bit better in that area. It's honestly probably the thing I've been most pleasantly surprised at with him coming into camp or going through camp this year. It's his willingness to throw short and his ability to make those throws somewhat routinely. Now, at the same time, he is a guy who can be night and day in games versus practice. So unfortunately, we have, what was it, like 5 minutes or so from that first preseason game to see him in game action. I'm definitely going to need to see more of him in the preseason before I fully believe it. But as far as like what he's done in training camp, he has definitely shown some improvements in those areas.
Besides the quarterback position, who stood out the most so far during camp?
Well, there's definitely been a couple receivers. Alec Pierce has been a guy that's pretty much performed every single day. He's missed a couple days, but overall, he's been arguably the best receiver out there. He's someone who is trying to prove himself to be more than just a downfield threat. And if you've got, if Daniel Jones is your quarterback, you're going to need to be able to do more than just, run post routes and run deep. But A.D. Mitchell as well, like, I would encourage us all to have, cautious optimism, but what he's doing this summer it looks a lot different than last year. The guy looks more comfortable, more confident. He was a guy who even the most routine things looked difficult during the season last year, right? And it just doesn't look that way. Like he's everything that should be a given for a receiver in a play, like making an uncontested catch, getting on the move right after the catch, just the most simple baseline things with AD. He's actually doing them this time around. And that's a guy who I don't think it's hyperbole from the Colts to say, if he meets his potential, he's their most dangerous receiver. So if he actually puts what we're seeing from the practice field into a game, then it could be a big difference maker for the Colts, because getting that extra from him where he gave you almost nothing last year, and then you add like the impact Tyler Warren has on top of it, like it could be a huge difference maker for the passing game. And it would really give the quarterbacks like zero excuse not to have some sort of success.
How do you balance? I want to figure out how to word this question without sounding like I'm trying to like disagree with you. The Colts have had a lot of injuries at corner. So, like, how much can you really tell if these guys have gotten better or not? Or is it maybe just they're playing against the Colts' fifth best corner because, guys 2 through 4 are down right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely difficult, and I think that's where the value of these joint practices are going to come in. Because, I mean, even with Baltimore last week, they were without Juju Brents and Jalen Jones, and those guys look good. Of course, Justin Wally looked good, and then he tears his ACL. So, it's just kind of like new injuries by every couple of days, it seems. They do have Green Bay on Thursday, so I think that'll be very telling, although they will be without Jordan Love. So I hope it's not a thing where you get to week 1 against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and it's like a rude awakening. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like it's not a huge step down, losing Justin Wally, and who knows how long Jalen Jones and Juju Brents will be out, going to like Jonathan Edwards and Chris Lamont and Alex Johnson. Like that will be a step down for sure. And to your point, I think it probably has skewed a little bit the performances of the quarterbacks, because I mean, you look at these big plays in practice and it's usually against a guy who would be on the practice squad, in coverage. So I think it would be naive to say that hasn't had some influence. But, at the same time, I think we really are going to have to see these guys in games, because these kind of, I don't want to call them rinky-dink cornerbacks, but the guys that nobody knows, they have made some plays in practice to their credit. But I don't think we're going to know if it's like which side of the coin is legit or not until we see these guys in some more games.
Joined by Jake Arthur of Locked on Colts, also covers the Colts over at SI.com if you want to go and read his stuff. What has been, so I've talked about this a little bit throughout the year. In training camp, look, when there's a quarterback battle, like that is the story. But something I'm really curious to kind of see this year, what do you think, what has the identity of the Colts been so far?
Well, I think what it's been so far in camp is different from what it will be in the regular season, because I do think they're trying to throw these quarterbacks through the ringer to see who's going to come out on top. So like when they're asking them to do a lot right now, but when we get to the regular season, I think it's very much going to be a run-centric offense. And they pretty much told us that by investing in DJ Giddens and Khalil Herbert and, the steps that Tyler Goodson has taken, and that's all behind Jonathan Taylor. So I think they very much intend to be a run-based offense once the regular season gets here. So that's what I imagine will be their identity. I think the perfect case for them would be if they can have a successful run game, even though they're working in 2 new starters on the interior of the line. If Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonzalez can just give them, adequate, solid run blocking, then I think they'll be just fine in the run game. Because again, Jonathan Taylor ran for 1,400 yards last year with missing 3 games. Like he was top 5 in the NFL in rushing despite being banged up. So I think they'll be fine in the run game if they can just have their quarterback kind of, establish a little bit of rhythm to the passing game and, hit some big plays based off of play action because the defense is having to sell out against the run. Then I think that is where they will find success. And I think that's probably what their identity needs to be.
So I'm probably in the minority in terms of the opinion on Tanner Bortolini. I felt like the longer he played last year, the worse he got. Matt Gonzalez obviously moving from tackle to guard. How have those guys looked so far during camp?
So I would give Bortolini the edge, and I think the big reason for that is, Tony Sperano Jr. kind of detailed it. Bortolini has a much better grasp mentally of what's going on out there now than he did last year. And you could kind of tell that last year. You mentioned as Bortolini kept playing, he maybe declined a little bit. And they had, Danny Pinter take over at center, filling in for Ryan Kelly. Because Bortolini got a concussion and he didn't resume the starting role, when he came back. It was Danny Pinter still. So he got some valuable reps last year, but I think they feel a lot more comfortable with how he is diagnosing things in front of him and what the defenses are doing. And so because of that, I do think he has looked more comfortable out there. Matt Gonzalez, definitely he's been more impactful in the run game. He is a guy who has not really been fleet of foot, so he's more reliant on his strength right now. And that definitely shows up when he's run blocking versus pass blocking. Now, to his credit, he's having to go against DeForest Buckner every day. So most guys are not going to succeed in that role. But yeah, I think he's really he's got some work to do when he deals with quicker defensive tackles and guys with quick hands and, who can sidestep very quickly because his lateral agility is not the best in the world. Zach and you mentioned Zach Hicks at the top there. We have kind of expected that. These are 2 guys who are still kind of rookies, essentially, and they're replacing Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, who, earned huge contracts during the offseason for a reason. So there's going to be some bumps in the road early, but these guys were good prospects coming out of the draft last year who did put some good tape out there. So it might be a little rough early on, but I'm not overly concerned with what those guys will look like, by the time week 18 gets here.
Joined by Jake Arthur of Locked on Colts. You can follow Jake on X, Jake Arthur NFL, and you can read his stuff over at SI.com. What's your biggest concern for the Colts this year?
Biggest concern, well, definitely quarterback. However, whatever angle we've looked at it, it always comes back around to, the roster looks pretty decent, but the quarterback position is obviously a huge mystery. I think this is probably the deepest group of skill position guys on offense they've had in a while. I'm not too concerned about the line, so as long as quarterback isn't disaster, I think they'll be okay there. I'm a little iffy on the run game defensively. Zaire Franklin is generally fine, although he can get caught in the wrong spot at times. The defensive line, I'm not, Neville Gallimore being your backup 3 tech, he's not a guy who traditionally has done well against the run. Neither has Adetomiwa Adebaware. Nose tackle behind Grover Stewart, we don't even know who that is going to be. Eric Johnson, Tim Smith, Josh Tupou, they're all battling for that. And, last year, really the last 2 years, whenever Buckner or Stewart has been off the field, the offense has smelled blood, attacked the middle of the defense, and it has largely worked for them. So I do have concerns about how the front 7 is going to hold up against the run. But then it's not like I feel 1,000,000% better about the secondary either. I definitely would have if not everybody was hurt.
Okay.
Charvarius Ward is out there, but Kenny Moore just suffered a knee injury. We're waiting to hear an update on that. Jalen Jones and Juju Brents are banged up. Justin Wally's out for the year. So right now, I mean, in practice, the top three cornerbacks you're looking at are Charvarius Ward, Chris Lamons in the slot, and then usually either or of Jonathan Edwards and Alex Johnson, who I am sure most of the people listening right now do not know who those guys are, and for good reason, So I do have some concerns in the secondary as well. The defense did look like it would be pretty decent going into this thing, but injuries are already kind of taking their toll.
Yeah, which is a real bummer. For me, my concern, aside from quarterback, obviously, is the defensive line. It's not necessarily the starters. I think on paper, like a starting, your four starting defensive linemen being Kwity Paye, Buckner, Stewart, and Laiatu Latu looks good. My concern is the depth, and I also don't know if they have like a truly elite pass rusher. Which brings me back to Latu. He's kind of supposed to be that guy. What have you seen from him in training camp so far?
Very good news there is that Latu has been one of the absolute best defensive players on the field. After their last practice on Sunday, I think it was, I was writing up my notes and I was like, you know what? I think Latu has had more days with multiple sacks than he has had days without a sack at all. So he's been on fire. Everyone else is kind of noticing it as well. The big thing with him, though, is, and he acknowledged this when we talked to him recently, so he was not really strong enough last year, and he needed to have a better grasp of what blockers were going to do to attack him. Those two things kind of hung him up last year. He did get in the backfield a lot, but he struggled to finish. Like, there was a lot of missed tackles out there. Like, what was 4 sacks probably should have been closer to like 7 or 8. But over the off season, he's done he's taken a lot of time to kind of focus on film study and what his opponents are going to do to counter him. And then at the same time, he says he thinks he's gotten stronger, to be able to hold up better, to get off of some of those blocks and things. So the good news there is they need him to be really, really good. And so far he looks really, really good. But he was yet another guy they held out last week against Baltimore. So we're going to need to see what it actually looks like in a game.
What do you expect to see tomorrow in the joint practices?
Well, I am very interested to see how this offense performs against Green Bay's defense, because one of the worst Colts offensive performances I've seen in a while was early last year against the Packers. And Anthony was at quarterback. And, it's the same defensive coordinator for Green Bay. It's a lot of the same personnel for the Colts on offense. So a year later, how does it look? Does it still look like a disaster? Do guys like A.D. Mitchell still step up? Does Tyler Warren still make a difference? So the areas that they really struggled against Green Bay last year, I want to see if those are still big problems. Because, again, Anthony was downright awful in that game. So how does he respond? And then on the defensive side of the ball, it was Malik Willis with the Packers last year, and it's going to be Malik Willis this week because Jordan Love is having, I think, thumb surgery or something.
Yeah.
So it's the same backup quarterback that they're facing, who didn't shred them last year, but had about as good of a performance as a backup could have. The game that their head coach called was brilliant, and so I want to see if, now this is a totally different Colts defense now under Lou Anarumo, but I want to see if they actually are up for the challenge against this Green Bay coaching staff, which is really, really good. I think it will be, because Cam Bynum and Charvarius Ward have looked worth every penny the Colts spent for them so far. As much as you can make that statement just through training camp. But I definitely want to make sure the defense doesn't get victimized against an offense that had no business doing that last year. And then again, as long as Anthony and the offense isn't just as flat as they were early last year against them.
Joined by Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts. You can also read his writing over at SI.com, where he covers the Colts. I would just like to hear that the Packers don't run the football for 7,000 yards like they did last year. Like, that was the most disappointing part of that game last year for me, was like the inability to stop the run when you knew that they weren't going to have Malik Willis throw it 30 times. So, look, if Grover and DeForest Buckner, if they both practice tomorrow, I'm sure that the Colts will be fine in that regard. If not, though, could be a long day.
Yeah, that was certainly embarrassing, and it was a sign of things to come last year. That the writing was kind of on the wall. It was the second week in a row that they allowed over 200 yards on the ground, and just ugly. Buckner did get injured in that game, but one guy was not going to make a difference there. And to your point, it was obvious that was going to be their plan of attack, and they still couldn't stop them until the second half. So yeah, I'm with you. I would like to see them right all of the wrongs from that ugly game last year.
Good old Gus Bradley. Let's play cover 3, boys, and see where it goes from there. Last thing for you, Jake, and I will let you go. Who do you think is going to be the Colts' Week 1 starter at quarterback?
Oh, that is such a good question. So if they had to make this decision tomorrow, I would probably give the edge to Anthony just because it's very, very close, and all the things we talked about at the top with, if it's close enough, then I think Anthony being more of a difference maker than Daniel should be the tiebreaker. But I think the big X factor here, and it's kind of frustrating, it's the things that we don't know about that only the coaches do. Like, what are they accomplishing what their assignments are supposed to be on each play? Like, how are they doing, like, with pre-snap checks, and we just don't know all of the mental things that they're being asked to do and if they're meeting those expectations. So there could be a quarterback decision made that we don't anticipate, and a big factor why could be, what's going on with those guys between the ears. So that will be probably frustrating because they may not tell us why. But I will say Anthony Richardson, just again, because I think he'll be more of a difference maker. But I would not be surprised if they're like, we just think Daniel is going to have more rhythm in the passing game, and we really like how he's diagnosing the defense and making checks and this and that. It's just completely a toss-up, and I would have hoped by now we would have had a little more direction on where they might be pointing, but I just don't think we do.
Yeah, which is, that's either a good thing because they're both playing well, or it's a bad thing because they're just even. We'll see. Jake, thanks for your time, man. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully we can get you back on here at some point during the season.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Awesome. See you. That is Jake Arthur. You can check him out on X at Jake Arthur NFL. He does a great job covering the Colts on the Locked On podcast and his writing over at SI.com. When we come back here in about 3 minutes, more on the Colts and the starting quarterback competition, Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson. Who is it going to be? I have thoughts in 3 minutes.
one day be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X __ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app, and just keep it on there after my show, because the Dan Dockett Show ensues very quickly after. Got two great guests today for his show. 2:30, we're gonna have Greg McElroy on to talk a little college football, and at 1:30, we got someone from Milwaukee coming on to talk about the Packers and that joint practice that is going to happen tomorrow. And in that joint practice, all eyes are, of course, going to be on Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. And, Mike Sando, who writes for The Athletic, every year he does this, article where it's like a quarterback tiers list, but it's not his tiers. They survey 50 different NFL coaches and executives. And, what tier do Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones end up in? The fourth tier. And that's probably right. Daniel Jones finishes, ranked 30th. Anthony Richardson's ranked 32nd. So one way or the other, there's a lot of bad in that quarterback room for the Indianapolis Colts between, two bad quarterbacks and a 6th-round pick in Riley Leonard, who didn't look very good in that preseason game either. So both guys are considered tier 4 quarterbacks by NFL executives and coaches. Just brutal. Anthony Richardson only being ranked in front of Spencer Rattler and Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett, by the way, the only 5th-tier quarterback in the NFL. Brutal. Having your own, it's like you suck so bad, we're going to give you your own tier that no one else is in. That's funny. It's funny. But how good do they have to be? Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, whoever gets the starting nod. We still don't really have a lean from the coaches one way or the other in terms of who's probably going to be the starter. How good does either one of them have to be for this Colts to potentially make the playoffs? How good do they have to be in order for the Colts to win, 10 games and fight for a division title for the first time in like a decade and to make the playoffs for the first time in 4 years? And to me, they have to break into the upper part of the third tier. Could the Colts make the playoffs with Kirk Cousins, who's the last quarterback listed in tier 3? Maybe. I wouldn't bet on it, though. What about Bryce Young? I like Bryce Young. I thought that the second half of the year last year, he was pretty good. But plug Bryce Young in this offense, probably not going to make the playoffs. You give the Colts Sam Darnold, are they going to make the playoffs? Probably not. Probably not. But the upper part of tier 3, that's your Kyler Murrays, your Tua Tagovailoas, and all those guys. Like you're like legitimately, like you look at them, you're like, yeah, it's a good NFL quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is up there. Trevor Lawrence is up there as well. That's what the Colts need. A quarterback around that level of play. What do all of these tier 3 quarterbacks have in common? What do they have in common? All of them can, at a minimum, execute the offense that they are having to run. Like Bryce Young, who got off to a really rough start, figured it out late, right? And he could run the offense that Carolina was running. Kirk Cousins could run the offense that the Falcons were running. Sam Darnold, really rough career. Shows up in Minnesota, runs the offense that Kevin O'Connell had in place, and he puts up top 5 quarterback in the NFL numbers. Bo Nix gets drafted, goes to Denver, just very simply runs the Sean Payton offense, hits the guys that are schemed open by Sean Payton, and they win 10 games, and they make the playoffs. Right? Like that's what all those tier 3 level guys can do. They can just run the offense that is being given to them. Daniel Jones has 1 year of just running the offense that he was in. And they made the playoffs. It was his first year playing for Brian Dable. Brian Dable, helps Josh Allen sort of new heights. And the Giants are like, Daniel Jones sucks. Brian Dable, get in here. Let's see if you can do for Daniel Jones what you did for Josh Allen. And then, year one, they win 9 games. They go 9-6-1, and they make the playoffs, and they beat Kirk Cousins on the road in Minnesota. And everyone's like, oh, pay Daniel Jones $40 million a year. And every year since then, he has not been able to execute the offense in New York. So can either one of these guys, because I don't have faith in either one of them to just run the offense that Shane Steichen has. But you not only need that, you need a little bit of magic as well to kind of break into that top end of tier 3. You know, Kyler Murray's the first quarterback listed in the 3rd tier. He can make plays off script. Tua's ability to process, everyone says that his processing is out of this world, and his ball placement is insane, all that kind of stuff. Like he's got a little magic to him in that regard. Aaron Rodgers, you know, he can still make plays outside of the pocket. We saw him do it a little bit for the Jets last year. Trevor Lawrence has shown the ability to occasionally make plays that only, you know, a select few guys in the NFL can make. And that's what the Colts need. The Colts need a quarterback who can run the system. You know, on 3rd and 3, when Shane Steichen dials up a play to get Josh Downs wide open 4 yards down the field, they need a quarterback who can just make that throw. And we can move the change. And then can occasionally throw in a little splash of special, like slipping and then throwing a 65-yard dime to Alec Pierce for a touchdown. Don't need that all the time. Just need like a little dose of it here and there. And that's why Anthony Richardson should be the starter. He gives you just a little bit more magic. And you need that in order to win these NFL games. The best quarterbacks in the NFL have the magic. They just do. Bill Simmons also came out with his quarterback pyramid the other day, and he ranked Josh Allen as the best quarterback in the NFL. And that's just wrong. It just is, and I get it. Like, you watch Josh Allen, and it's way more fun, especially the past few years, compared to watching Patrick Mahomes, you know, because Josh Allen is running over dudes, and he's jumping over guys, and, you know, he's pushing the ball down the field a lot more than what Mahomes is doing, and all that kind of stuff. But Patrick Mahomes is 4-0 against Josh Allen in the playoffs. What else needs to be said? And I get it. Josh Allen's played really well in all of those games. Don't care. Mahomes 4-0. People get so caught up in talent, and talent is obviously important. The best players in every sport tend to have the most talent. But the best players in every sport also tend to win. And that is the most important thing. The most important thing is to win whatever game you are playing in. And that is what Patrick Mahomes does better than anyone. Patrick Mahomes gives you the highest floor in the history of the NFL. All he's done is make the AFC Championship game all 7 years that he's been a starter. 5 of those years he's advanced to the Super Bowl, where he's gone 3-2. I understand that watching Josh Allen is more amazing right now than watching Mahomes, especially over, you know, the last couple of years. But please also remember that when Patrick Mahomes had, you know, in his prime, Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill stretching the defense, that he was more fun to watch than Josh Allen has been these past couple of years. Boring wins, though. Tom Brady was boring. He made all the easy throws. He kept the chains moving, right? There was a lot of slant routes thrown to Wes Welker and a lot of 5-yard dig routes thrown to Julian Edelman. Right? Like that's a lot of what the Tom Brady offense was in New England. But when a big play needed to be made, Tom Brady always made that play. He always made it. That's why he won 7 freaking Super Bowls. And that's all that Patrick Mahomes has done throughout his career. He makes the play in just about every playoff game that he plays in. How many times has Josh Allen made the play in the playoffs against the Chiefs? The answer is 0. Because if he had made the play that defines the game, then the Bills would have won one of them by now. And they haven't. Every time Josh Allen makes a play in the playoffs, Patrick Mahomes one-ups him, and he wins the football game. And that is ultimately what matters, and that is how we define best and great. It's about who wins. Now, I say all that to bring it back to the Indianapolis Colts. Because this ability to make the play in the big spot is something that isn't being discussed when it comes to this Indianapolis Colts quarterback battle. And to be fair, this is something that we can't know until real games start. Or we could just look at the history of these two guys and figure it out pretty quickly. In terms of which guy is able to make the play in the big spot when their team needs it. The answer is Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson was bad last year. Anyone who tries to tell you anything different is, a homer. And they just love Anthony Richardson for whatever reason. He was bad last year. But Anthony Richardson had a knack for making the play in the big spot. He produced 3 game-winning drives last year for the Colts, which was tied for 9th most in the NFL. That to me is impressive. It's like, hey, I've sucked for the first 52 and a half minutes of this game, but in these final 7 minutes, I'm going to make every play that I need to for us to win. He did it against the Miami Dolphins. The one against the Jets was the prettiest. He hits Alec Pierce on this double move, and they score and they win the game off of that. My favorite one though was the one against the Patriots because it was so ugly. It's like a 19 play drive. It takes them like 9 minutes to move the football 75 yards, and it's just Anthony Richardson just figuring it out. Oh, it's 4th and 3. Oh, no, they sent a blitz. Let me move out to my right. Oh, I'm faster than this guy. Let me pick this first down up with my legs. Just constantly just finding a way to get it done, converting on multiple 4th downs, finding a way to make the play when the Colts needed it most. And that is something that you can't evaluate in training camp. That's something that you have to go back and watch old games and see. And I don't think Daniel Jones is doing that. I don't think he's making the play in the big spot. Anthony Richardson has shown that he might be able to do that. And they're I hate every year, these NFL analysts, they're like, oh, this team went 1-12 in 1-score games last year. If they can just figure that out, then, they're due for a big turnaround. Like every game in the NFL is a 1-score game. If you go look at the lines in Vegas, most of them are under 7 points. All these teams are so incredibly close, and it's why the Chiefs win so often. It's because they have the best quarterback who is the best at making the play in the big spot. And the Colts have to have a quarterback who can do that if they want to win games and they want to maybe, just maybe, make the playoffs. And I think Anthony Richardson is much more likely to do that than Daniel Jones because I saw him do it last year when he was bad. Simple as that. So hopefully Anthony Richardson wins that starting quarterback job. If it's Daniel Jones, then geez Louise, is going to be brutal. It's going to be a brutal, brutal season watching that guy try to play quarterback. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Anthony Richardson sat down with Sirius XM's NFL show, talked a little bit about what he worked on in the offseason, talked about trying to come back in the game against the Ravens after hurting his pinky. Got that audio for you in 4 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith to watch the show there and follow me there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And if you go download the app, just leave it on and tune into the Dan Dockett Show from noon to 3, starting here in about 15 minutes. We're going to talk about the joint practice. We got Greg McElroy coming on today to talk a little bit about college football as well. That's right around the corner, a week from Saturday. Can't wait. I'm very, very excited about it. I think I'm more excited about IU football than I am Colts football, which is a very weird statement to say in the state of Indiana. Anthony Richardson was asked yesterday, he did an interview with Sirius XM, and he was asked about just kind of his offseason. What did he work on? He talked about working on his touch a little bit, throwing the football, and he was asked about his pinky as well.
Yeah, man, that was a huge emphasis when it came to my off-season training this year. Everybody knows I can rip it and gun it whenever I get a chance, And growing up, I always heard you throw the ball so hard. I'm like, I'm not trying to do that. It just happens to do that. So I just wanted to take a step in my game and just be able to make those touch passes when it's there, because you don't have to run and gun every single thing. And I also just think about my rookie year, playing against the Rams, and I just see Stafford just throwing the ball just so nice and so soft. And I'm like, man, I got to add that to my game, because that just throws guys open, gets guys open, and just get them to the ball. And also when it comes to the offense, I just feel like I've been putting in the work just to try to, understand the offense more. I told Coach I wanted to be able to master the offense. So whenever there was a chance for me to teach the offense, I want to be just as good as him when it comes to teaching that. So that's just me just trying to take a step and just improve my game every step of the way.
For most mere mortals, having a finger on your throwing hand that doesn't really work that well right now would be a big issue. I didn't see you wince when we shook hands or anything like that. I mean, how is the pinky finger doing right now?
No, it's all good, honestly. I was actually trying to get back in the game when it happened, because I just saw it. I'm like, man, that's not supposed to look like that. But, they popped it back in place, and I just threw the ball around a little bit just to see how it felt. And ultimately, it's been feeling better day by day. And, it hasn't stopped me from practice, and I'm excited to keep it going.
Anthony Richardson right there on NFL or on the Sirius XM NFL show, talking about what he worked on in the offseason and his pinky as well, which he dislocated in that Ravens game. He's good to go, though. He's fine, as he said. I want to like this dude so badly. I do. I like that he's trying. I feel like he is, but man, it's year 3. You're in year 3. You should have mastered the playbook by now. You should have. I understand, if you're a rookie, you're coming in, and these NFL playbooks are very complex. I don't know if you've watched Quarterback on Netflix, but there's a whole scene where Jared Goff calls plays, and he's sitting on his couch, and he's having to practice reading them, because the plays themselves they're just bizarre. And and then when you're in the huddle, you're not just calling one play, you're calling at least 2. Sometimes teams will call more than 2. There's just a lot going on. There's a lot to process. So if you're a rookie and you don't quite understand the playbook, okay, I can understand that. But your rookie season, if you hurt your shoulder and you miss the rest of the year and you can't work on throwing the football in the offseason, then I expect for you to take that time that you would spend throwing the football in the offseason, I would expect for you to work on learning the playbook. Work on learning the concepts that Shane Steichen likes to run. Instead of being able to go out and throw every single day, sit in, your probably very nice house and your very nice recliner. By the way, if you've ever been in one of those big air casts, which they usually put you in after you mess up your shoulder, you want to be in a recliner. That's the most comfortable place to be. Sit in a comfortable chair, turn your projector on or your TV on, and grind the tape. sit in that chair with the big playbook in your lap and work through it and learn it and master it. This is something that he should have been working on before this last offseason. Before it. So I'm not surprised. And I appreciate that he wants to work on this a little bit. But man, like this is something that should have been worked on. Like you should have mastered the playbook by now before going into year 3. Now, the positive side of things in this interview, because I do think that there are some positives to take out of it. I like hearing that he worked on his touch in the offseason. That was the biggest thing with him. Everything was thrown hard. We've heard other people talk about this. Like every video that the Colts post over on X is him making like a touch pass. We've heard, Michael Pittman Jr. say that he's been much better at that. The writers, the insiders who were practice every day, they're saying that he's gotten better at that. So I like hearing that that's what he worked on in the offseason, because that is what he needed to work on, because touch was an issue for him last year. Could have been part of why the Colts had so many drops last season. Apparently they were second in drop rate last year. Not great. I also like hearing that he tried to get back into the preseason game after dislocating his pinky, because this is something else that I don't think would have happened last year. Anthony Richardson, the toughness with him is very questionable. Tapping out, week 17, or week 18, final game of the year. It seemed like he was healthy, but for some reason he didn't play. And then Chris Ballard talked about how they wanted to make sure that he had a healthy offseason and how important that is. That way he could work on all the things that he was bad at and all that kind of stuff. But the toughness part for him is a major question. And you can't be the starting quarterback of an NFL franchise if you're not tough. All of the best quarterbacks in the NFL are immensely tough. Patrick Mahomes' willingness on, 3rd and 6 to scramble and lower the shoulder to try to pick up the first down, that's how he shows his toughness. His ability to play in the playoffs after, I feel like he sprains his ankle in the playoffs every year, and he just plays through it. And he doesn't really care about it. And he still scrambles, and he still finds a way to be impactful. That is how he displays his toughness. Josh Allen's ability to run through dudes and be willing to do all these quarterback designed runs, like that is the demonstration of his toughness. Joe Burrow is a guy who plays hurt, and when he gets hit, doesn't lay on the ground for forever. Lamar Jackson, his willingness to run and put his body on the line demonstrates his toughness. For Anthony Richardson, he shows a willingness to run. He talks about how he doesn't like to slide and how he wants to deliver hits as a runner, which is fine. But when you get hit, you have to get up quickly and you have to stay in the game if you're going to be, that kind of a quarterback. And so the fact that he was, trying to come back in after dislocating his pinky seems like a step in the right direction when it comes to him showing that he's a tougher version of himself compared to last year, because the toughness was an issue for him. And for Shohei Ohtani, scandals involving money are starting to become an issue for him. He was sued by a real estate development company, or people that used to work for a real estate development company in Hawaii. Basically he was hired to kind of help promote it because he's Shohei Ohtani, very, very famous dude, and so there's a lawsuit filed against Ohtani and his agent, Fall Guy Part 2, maybe, we'll see. And basically these two guys are accusing Ohtani and his agent for getting them fired, because, they were asking for money and they ended up pushing him out, and, it's not good. And, I don't know much about the law. Believe it or not, I am not a lawyer. And I do think, though, that if something like this happens once, it's all right. The gambling thing, hey, it happens. The agent stole money from Ohtani. Ohtani had no idea. Sure. I can believe that once. If you ask me to believe it twice, it's going to be much tougher for me to do that. So it seems like Ohtani had some involvement in this at some level. right? Like I doubt that his agent was going completely and totally behind his back again, right? Also, I'm intrigued to kind of see where this goes because it's just, where there's smoke, there's fire. And this is the second time we've had smoke around Ohtani. So at what point do we learn that he's actually been a pretty big part of this? Thank you for taking the time out of your day to tune into The Real Jonathan Smith Show. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. I'll be back on tomorrow from 10 to noon. Jared Dubin is going to join the show. He covers the NFL over at CBSSports.com. We'll probably do just like a big generic NFL thing. We'll talk about some of the different holdouts, guys waiting for contracts. We'll obviously talk about the Colts this upcoming season. Tomorrow, Packers, Colts join practice. Should be a lot of fun. I'm going to be covering all of it right here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show from 10 to noon. So make sure you are tuned in. Don't touch that dial. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way next. Greg McElroy at 2:30 to talk about the upcoming college football season, what to kind of expect from Indiana, and Bill Schmid from Milwaukee. He's going to join the show to talk about the Packers as well. Big show. Going to be great. Thank you again for tuning in. I'll talk to you tomorrow starting at 10 a.m.